Please adhere to YouTube's selected guidelines before viewing the content of this video. I do not encourage or condone any products, actions, or behaviors shown in this video. All videos are produced in a safe, professional, and controlled environment. Please do not attempt to replicate any actions performed during the video. All actions are performed by professionals. Alright, so today I'm going to be drinking a whiskey and water for the first time, which, as a whole, I'm looking forward to doing quite a bit. It's simply a mixture of whiskey and water. That's all there is to this mixed drink. But I have seen some posts about whiskey and waters, and I have heard some good things about them. And as somebody who enjoys simple whiskey highballs, I'm kind of curious to find out how whiskey mixed into just normal uncarbonated water is going to be for the very first time today. As such, well, I've decided to drink a whiskey and water for the first time today, and, well, as a whole, I'm very excited to do exactly that. Just how will this experience be? Will I enjoy my first ever whiskey and water, and will I get a buzz? Well, I hope the answer is yes to all of those questions. But what is the whiskey I have with me today? Well, today I have a bottle of the Evan Williams Bottled & Bond Kentucky Straight Bourbon Whiskey with me today. This is my favorite American whiskey to use in whiskey highballs, and so as such I figured it'd probably be a pretty good option for a whiskey and water as well. As far as my water goes, I have some of the Mountain Valley spring water with me today. I imagine if I enjoy this experience and I want to have more whiskey and waters in the future, I'll probably be using tap water a little bit more so than not. But for the first initial experience, I decided that I want to feel a little bit fancy, and so as such, I've gone for some, well, Mountain Valley spring water today for the water that I'm going to be using in my whiskey and water. I do suppose, without further ado, before I go ahead and get to mix my drink, I should quickly grab myself a thumbnail before I crack everything open and everything like that. And then after that, I'm going to have to go ahead and get to mixing my drink, and I'm going to have to go ahead and take a sip of a whiskey and water for the first time and find out just how it actually is, what it's actually like, and, well, what I think of a whiskey and water for the very first time, I do suppose. As said, first off, let's go ahead and grab myself a quick little thumbnail, if I possibly can. This bottle of water is a little bit heavy. Alright, well, hopefully one of those will do as a thumbnail for the video. We will find out. Now I'm going to go ahead and move my camera back just a little bit, just so y'all can see the mixing process and whatnot. I think that should be a good perspective on what the mixing process will be. So, without further ado, let's go ahead and grab my 375 milliliter bottle of the Evan Williams Bottled & Bond. Let's get it cracked open, and let's see how much whiskey I want to pour in. So I've made a lot of whiskey highballs before, and I think I'm just going to try pouring in the same amount of whiskey that I pour into my whiskey highballs. I don't know if that's going to be too much or too little. Probably, if anything, too much, but I'm going to try that amount because that amount works for whiskey highballs, and I'm figuring it's probably going to work for just a simple whiskey and water as well. Not sure, but we're going to find out. This is a learning experience after all. If it's too much, it's too much. I can always add more water later on after I take a couple sips after all. So let's go ahead and pour myself a little bit of my whiskey in. How much do I want? I'm thinking that amount is probably the amount I want to start off with. Just trying to hold it flat. I'm thinking that should be good for my first ever whiskey and water. Maybe a little bit less. This might be a little bit less than I would use for a whiskey highball, but it's right on the level, generally speaking. Now, without further ado, let's go ahead and crack open my fresh bottle of Mountain Valley spring water, and let's go ahead and pour the rest of my glass full of water, I do think. So let's go ahead, pour it just like that kind of thing. There we go. There we go. Alrighty. So, before I go ahead and get to drinking, I'm just going to smell it real quick, see how intense the smell of the whiskey is. Definitely with like whiskey highballs and other mixed drinks that are pretty simple and stuff like that kind of thing. Sometimes whatever flavoring you have really overwhelms the whiskey, well, scent kind of thing. But there is no flavoring. It's just a whiskey and water, so I'm curious to know just what the actual drink is going to smell like before I actually go ahead and get to drinking. Let's grab my camera, though, and kind of just bring it back just a little bit. I think right there is going to be a good position, so let's go for that. And let's go ahead and smell this beverage real quick. Overall, smells like the Evan Williams Bottled and Bond, but at the same time, not quite as intense, of course. It's, well, like I would have to say like a 2 to 10 ratio, a 1 to 5 ratio of whiskey to water. But overall, I'm getting that of a, I would have to say like caramel, like brown sugar, a little bit of like just whiskey scent, I'd have to say. Definitely the whiskey scent is coming off the top of this drink, no question at all. Well, I do suppose without further ado, I should probably go ahead and take a sip of my first ever whiskey and water and find out just how it is, what it's like, and what I think of it. I do think I did make one mistake, though I will acknowledge, that mistake being the water I used today is not cold. It's room temperature water. So yeah, we're gonna find out how this is. Without further ado, let's get to drinking, y'all. Yes, sir, yes, sir. You know what I'm saying? First sip is definitely smoother than sipping on whiskey like I would be. But I will acknowledge, due to the lack of carbonation and due to the little bit of a lemon flavor that you would get from a whiskey highball, this is different and a little bit more just, oh, crap, it's alcohol kind of thing. It's a little bit more intense, just flavor-wise, whiskey-wise, flavor-wise, in general, I will acknowledge. No big surprise. After all, it's literally just a whiskey and water. There's no flavoring going on. It's just whiskey and water. It's just watered down whiskey, I guess is really the right way of putting it. It's okay. One thing I will say, the lack of carbonation is not bothering me so much. It's mainly just the fact that there's not some other thing going on in there besides just the whiskey kind of thing. If I was to use, like, let's say, lemon-flavored uncarbonated water, I think that this would be, honestly, probably more to my liking. But I also think that how good a whiskey and water is really does depend on, one, how much whiskey you use, two, how much of an acquired taste you have, because this definitely does seem like a beverage that is somewhat of an acquired taste. I don't think this is a beverage that everybody will like by any means. And I think, three, it just depends on what whiskey you use. Did I already say that? I might have already said that. I can't remember. Interesting. I also think what water you use makes a very large difference. Like, let's go ahead, I'm just gonna take a sip of this straight. See, this is very much spring water. It's got a very sort of mineral-esque sort of flavor to it, in my personal opinion. It's very much a spring water kind of thing. It's got that sort of like, I want to say like sort of, I'm like, maybe mineral-esque is not really the right way of putting it, because it's not mineral water, of course. But it's got that sort of like water sort of, it's weird to describe water as being dry, but it's got that sort of like dry, chalky, rock-like granite taste, which is not a bad thing on its own kind of thing. I really don't mind that on its own. I really like getting different flavors from different water and stuff like that kind of thing. Tap water tastes different than spring water, and some spring waters just brand to brand taste completely different kind of thing. There was a lot of variation in the water world, I will acknowledge, and that's without even mentioning seawater. Don't drink seawater. That's not good for you. Don't do that. I honestly think I might enjoy this more if it wasn't spring water, in all honesty. Like the spring water, the sort of chalky, sort of rock-like kind of just thing going on with it. I don't know. I don't know. It doesn't really work very well with the whiskey, I'll acknowledge. So I really do think with whiskey and waters that honestly, it's not just the whiskey that matters, it's the water as well, but also it's just how the whiskey and water work together at the same time kind of thing. I've also got a bottle of tap water with me today in my Nalgene water bottle right here, and so I think after I finish this one, I might have to try a whiskey and water just simply made with tap water and see if I enjoy that more, because maybe I actually will. I'm not sure. But overall, this is not bad by any means. This is not bad by any means, but it definitely is, I don't want to say a little bit more of an intense experience when compared to, like, let's say a whiskey highball or something like that kind of thing, but it is different. It's different. The liquor kind of hits your taste buds harder, of course, because there's no other flavor going on in there. There's no carbonation to distract you. It's just a whiskey and water. And while the flavor of the whiskey is a little bit muddled, of course, because you're diluting it with water, the water flavor really does shine through very well kind of thing. I think, honestly, the optimal water for a whiskey and water might be a water that you're just so used to the taste to that you kind of just don't notice the taste of that water anymore. And since I don't really drink a lot of spring water, the majority of the water I drink, 99.9% of the time, is going to be tap water. I'll acknowledge I carry around my Nalgene water bottle with me every day. I drink tap water at home all the time. That's the water that I'm used to. That's the water that I drink all the time. Spring water is not that. So I really do think half of what's throwing me off with this experience isn't really so much the lack of carbonation, because that's really not bothering me at all. It's just more the taste of the water with the whiskey. But the more I drink, the more I go, this is pretty solid. Like, it kind of caught me off guard at first. Like, I don't know exactly what I was expecting from the first sip, but it really did kind of catch me off guard. And I found myself thinking, okay, this is an acquired taste when I first started drinking. But now that I've been drinking for a minute, I'm like, nah, this is pretty solid. Like, this is just a really simple, refreshing beverage. Like, it would be really good if it was cold. The water's not really cold, but it would be really good if it was cold. But it's still pretty solid right now. I caught myself thinking when I took my first sip, man, this is an acquired taste kind of thing. I don't know if this is going to be my thing. Now that I've gotten over halfway through the glass, I'm not minding it by any means, and I've come to a very interesting realization. So previously, when I was in Okinawa, I visited Okinawa for about a week this past summer, and I was trying some alcohol from Okinawa and stuff like that kind of thing. And I tried what I thought at that time was an Okinawan-made sake. Turns out I was wrong. It was actually awamori, which is a type of, like, Okinawan-specific liquor, but it can also be diluted and put into like 11 to 14% cups. And so there's like cup awamori in Okinawa as well. I tried awamori thinking it was sake, and I was like, man, this is so different, realizing only afterwards that it's a completely different thing. And when I was drinking it, I was like, oh my God, this literally just tastes like very sort of almost dry, chalky, rocky water. Like, I was just kind of like, this is kind of like just like dry, rocky, chalky water in the best way possible. I was like, this is literally just alcoholic water in the best way possible. It was one of the most unique drinking experiences I have had from a prepackaged alcoholic beverage ever, without a doubt. Super interesting alcoholic beverage, and I'd absolutely drink a lot more in the future. This, with the spring water, the whiskey and spring water mixture in this cup right here, it really reminds me so much of the Okinawan awamori. Not everything, of course, but really just that sort of rocky, sort of mineral-esque water flavor with the alcohol in there really reminds me a lot of Okinawan Awamori. Now, of course, the undertones of the whiskey itself, they're very different. They're very different kind of thing. And this is a different experience from Okinawan Awamori, but that's really the best comparison I have to what this is that kind of thing. I was totally thinking, okay, this is going to be most similar to a whiskey highball. Actually, no, this is not most similar to a whiskey highball in my opinion at all. This is really most similar, oddly enough, to Okinawan Awamori, which is very, very, very interesting in my opinion. But I think that really comes down to not the fact that this is a whiskey and water. I think it just comes down to the fact that I use spring water, which is a little bit sort of chalky, dry, rocky sort of tasting. The Mountain Valley spring water has an extremely similar sort of flavor profile and general mouthfeel as the Okinawan Awamori, and I really do think that's what's reminding me of it just so much. And definitely a little bit rougher at the very end, but really not much. Really not much. I really just feel like I just drank a glass of water, frankly put. I'm be honest. You know, I was thinking at the beginning of this video, and I was thinking when I first took a sip, that this might be an acquired taste. I was thinking that. I was like, if it's not super similar to like a whiskey highball kind of thing, which it's not. This is far more different than I thought it was going to be. Then it's going to be kind of an acquired taste. I think I have acquired that taste. Excuse me. I don't think I quite enjoy just whiskey and waters as much as whiskey highballs. Not at this moment in time, at least. But they're one of those things that I can absolutely see myself drinking again without a doubt, especially just for how simple they are, kind of thing. Like, if I'm in a park and I want to drink a mixed drink, I don't want to drink straight liquor, all I got to do is I got to take a cup and I've just got to, like, put a little bit of whiskey in the bottom, go over to the water fountain, and fill the cup up with water, and there's my mixed drink. I don't even have to pay for a mixer. I can just get it for free at the local public park. Actually, that's a banger idea. That's it. I'm going to have to do that. Whiskey and water made with water from a water fountain in a public park? Bro. Me when I drink the whiskey and water of amazing ideas. Now that's what I'm talking about, baby. Alrighty, though. So, I've tried a whiskey and water with spring water. That was really interesting. Caught me a little bit off guard, not really because of the whiskey, of course, but just because the water was so different from what I'm used to. But the entire experience as a whole was really interesting and very reminiscent of something I've tried in the past. I kind of want to try a whiskey and water made with just tap water now. So, yeah, let's go ahead and pour myself another drink, and let's try a whiskey and water made with just normal tap water that I have in my Nalgene water bottle that's sitting on the ground right now. I'm going to try to pour in the same amount of whiskey as I had in the first one, just so I have a good control and just comparison. I think that might be a little bit more, but it's okay. Don't worry about it. It's okay. Don't worry about it. No stress, no stress. Alrighty, though. So, real quick, though, before I go ahead and pour myself my water into my glass, I am just going to take a sip of it real quick and just try to go, okay, what's this flavor like compared to the spring water? So I would have to say that the spring water is definitely a little bit harder, one. The spring water is definitely a little bit harder than this. This is definitely a little bit softer. I wouldn't call it soft water. I have had soft water, like I was up in Pittsburgh like a year or two ago, and man, I swear, like the water up there off of the tap, it tastes like straight soda. I ain't gonna lie, y'all. Like, it's so sweet, it's so soft, it's crazy. This is like a medium hard, whereas the spring water, in my opinion, would be like a pretty heavy hard. This is like a medium hard water, in my personal opinion, on the softer side compared to the spring water, but definitely still a hard water, in my opinion. And then there's a little bit of sweetness in it as well, and it's just kind of water. It's just kind of tap water. I'm like, this is the water I drink all the time. I drink it so much that I'm just so used to the flavor that honestly I can't even pinpoint flavors anymore. But let's go ahead and pour it in my glass and find out how it is with some whiskey. So let's go and pour it in. All right, so there we go. Got my drink poured. This is turning into, I'll acknowledge, I was kind of thinking, I was like, whiskey and water is just gonna be whiskey and water kind of thing. This is gonna be pretty simple experience, not too much going on kind of thing. No, there's so much more to this than I originally thought. Whiskey and water is not just whiskey and water. You have to think about, okay, what water is gonna be best with what whiskey is gonna be best with what water. And you have to think about, like, okay, do I prefer spring water? Do I prefer tap water? Do I prefer distilled water? Do I prefer Dasani? Please don't prefer Dasani. I hate Dasani. It's like the worst stuff ever. Oh my God, I hate Dasani. This is a topic for another video. But there's so much more. There's so much more to a whiskey and water than I thought initially. I really thought that this was not going to be a particularly complex experience. This is a simple experience with a lot of complexity that you don't notice originally. It's like doing a brake job on a car, and then you get the wheel off, you take the brake pads out, and you're like, oh my God, my caliper is rusty, and oh my God, it's stuck, and I now have to buy more tools to get everything to push back into the caliper so I can actually put the brake pads back on and everything like that kind of thing. A simple exercise turns into an extremely complex experience very quickly, and that's very much the experience I'm having with a whiskey highball today. And some of y'all might be thinking I'm being sarcastic. I am not being sarcastic. I am not joking. I am being genuine right now. This is not a joke. This is genuinely, you can generally make a whiskey and water as complex or as simple as you want it to be. But it is a simple beverage, but you can make it complex if you want to. You can think about it a lot if you want to. Let's go and take my first sip of my second drink and find out just how a whiskey and tap water is as well. I actually prefer this. I prefer this. The whiskey and spring water was very interesting. Very interesting. But I'll acknowledge that sort of spring water flavor actually kind of did overwhelm the flavor of the whiskey just a little bit. And I'm just now noticing that because of the comparison. But I think really the majority of the reason why I prefer the whiskey and tap water over the whiskey and spring water is just because I'm used to drinking tap water. That's what I drink 99.9% of the time. I barely ever buy bottles of water these days. Excuse me. I barely ever drink anything but tap water from my local area, kind of thing. And I really do think that, yeah, just due to me being used to tap water in my local area and due to that being what I mixed into this second drink, I really do think that's why I prefer this drink over the first one. It's not like I prefer it like I dislike the first one in comparison. I still enjoyed the first drink, I will acknowledge, but it definitely kind of caught me a bit off guard just because I think of the spring water, honestly. Very interesting. Very, very, very interesting. Yeah, with this second one, due to the fact that I'm so used to the flavor of the tap water in my local area, in my opinion, the flavor of the whiskey is kind of coming through a little bit more. The flavor of the whiskey is kind of coming through a little bit more, but it's not coming through to any insane degree, I'll acknowledge. It's not coming through to any huge degree. And it's very interesting as well. I really do feel like, for some reason, the whiskey kind of exemplifies the sort of mineral-esque aspects of the water at hand kind of thing. I took a sip of the spring water straight, and yeah, it tastes very sort of chalky, minerally, rocky, sort of spring water-esque. But I didn't really realize this until now. But I really do think the whiskey exemplified that. And while with the tap water that I normally drink, I personally feel like it's a medium hard, slightly sweet. sort of water, but I really don't notice anything other than that. But in my opinion, the whiskey is really just exemplifying any sort of mineral aspects of the water. So it's really odd. It's really a complementary thing. You'd be thinking, okay, it's just going to be whiskey and water. There's just going to be water. And then there's the flavor of whiskey underneath, diluted whiskey kind of thing. But in reality, they're combining together very well. And you're getting the flavor of a little bit of diluted whiskey, of course. But honestly, water that has changed flavor just a little bit due to the whiskey. And the whiskey really just exemplifies the sort of mineral-esque aspects of the water for some reason. I don't know, maybe it's just me. Maybe this is crazy talk. I got no idea, but very interesting, very interesting. And due to the fact that I've only ever drank a whiskey and carbonated water before this experience, before this video today, I never really experienced, I really never noticed, especially since I don't really drink carbonated water on its own ever, only with whiskey in whiskey highballs. I never really noticed how whiskey might actually change the flavor of the base mixer kind of thing. With like Coca-Cola and Pepsi and Dr. Pepper and stuff like that kind of thing, it's kind of that changing the flavor of the whiskey, or they kind of stay separate, but they've got their own things going on. But with this experience, very much it's the water changes the flavor of the whiskey and the whiskey changes the flavor of the water. Very, very, very interesting. And I gotta admit, I mean, like, I think if you're somebody that doesn't like carbonation kind of thing, like let's say carbonation makes you bloat or carbonation just makes you feel sick in general, hey, you know, I've been there. I've drank enough soda to make myself feel sick, for sure, without a doubt. And it wasn't the sugar, it was the carbonation that made me feel sick. And I've heard there are plenty of people out there where the carbonation just bothers them. If you are somebody that has issues with carbonation, then I really do think maybe try finding like a lemon flavored non-sparkling water or something like that kind of thing, and try mixing that up with some whiskey if you want to try a whiskey highball for the first time but you don't want to go for carbonated water. I think that might be what you want to go for. Yeah, very interesting, and I gotta admit, there's a lot more to whiskey and waters than meets the eye. Really, the type of water is so important for personal preference kind of thing. Like, just my personal preference when it comes to water is tap water. That's my personal preference. I prefer tap water. And so as such, a whiskey and water made with tap water is more to my personal preference. But if you prefer spring water or mineral water or heaven forbid, Dasani, use your personal preference for a whiskey and water, because it really will make all the difference. Do not use a type of water that you do not like, because then it might not be your thing. But if you use the water you like, I have faith, then it will be appreciated. But I've been talking about the flavor so much, I've neglected to actually speak on the smoothness and the experience as a whole. So let's talk about that in a moment. So when it comes to smoothness, I would say that this is slightly less smooth than a whiskey highball. I really do think the lemon in a whiskey highball and the carbonation definitely makes it smoother kind of thing. So it's slightly less smooth than a whiskey highball in my personal opinion. But that's really only just due to the increased prevalence of alcohol flavor in the drink itself, or at least the increased prevalence of noticed alcohol flavor due to the lack of carbonation and due to the lack of a lemon flavor kind of thing. So I would say it's slightly more rough than a whiskey highball, but not terribly rough by any means kind of thing, compared to sipping on straight whiskey kind of thing. You can still just take a big swig and you're all good. And you're just chilling kind of thing. Not very, very smooth kind of thing, quite smooth. Of course, I think if you did whiskey with like 1 part whiskey, 1 part water. I don't think it would be smooth, but with my like one part whiskey, 5 parts water, it's quite smooth. I quite like it. I'll acknowledge. It's very solid. And yeah, no, very smooth, very solid overall. Gotta admit, whiskey and water, definitely something that is a smoother drinking experience than maybe not quite as smooth or quite as pleasant as at first as a whiskey highball. I think a whiskey highball is really one of those things where if you like carbonated water and you like whiskey, you're probably going to like a whiskey highball kind of thing. I do think that this, a whiskey and water, is not for everybody though. But it's so simple to make that it's like, might as well try. You just pour tap water in a glass with some whiskey kind of thing. If you don't like it, it is what it is. You're not burning any money on ingredients, really, in all honesty. So it's like, mine as well. And I'm honestly surprised it's taken me this long to try a whiskey and water, frankly put. But no, quite smooth, quite solid in my personal opinion. Definitely buzz-inducing, and I gotta admit, the buzz itself is super clean. Like, the reason why I like whiskey highballs is because the buzz is just so clean, kind of thing. There's no sort of sugar in there. There's no caffeine in there. I really love my rum and cokes and like my whiskey and Dr. Peppers and stuff like that kind of thing. They're so good. But I haven't found myself drinking them a lot because of the sugar and caffeine in them. The buzz gets influenced. It becomes a little bit more intense due to that sugar and caffeine. Sometimes it can be a little bit overwhelming at times. And sometimes it's just not what I want at that time, because if I'm drinking late at night, I don't want caffeine. I don't want a lot of sugar late at night when I'm probably going to be going to bed in an hour or two or something like that kind of thing. I just want an alcohol buzz while I'm doing whatever I'm doing, if I'm watching TV or something like that kind of thing. Or if I'm working on a personal project or something like that, then I just want a clean buzz just to get some alcohol, to kind of just enjoy some alcohol while I'm doing, while I'm doing what I'm doing. But I don't want to feel too much, kind of thing. And so I've been going to whiskey highballs, whiskey and carbonated waters with lemon flavor for that. And that's a very clean buzz. But I gotta admit, this is an even cleaner buzz, because I didn't realize how much of an effect the carbonated water had on my stomach. Because I can definitely feel the carbonated water in my stomach. When I drink like 2-3 like whiskey highballs, the carbonated water definitely starts building up, kind of thing. The carbonation in my stomach definitely starts building up. And while I didn't really notice that previously, I certainly am just noticing the difference now in buzz and just in how I'm feeling as I'm drinking and as I'm continuing to drink during this experience today. This is, besides just drinking liquor straight, the cleanest buzz I have ever had from drinking liquor. Straight up. It is the cleanest buzz I have ever had from a mixed drink, and the only thing that gives you a cleaner buzz is drinking straight liquor. Yeah, that's kind of my take. So yeah, I mean, like, if a straight whiskey and water isn't your thing and you just want to put in like some lemon juice or something like that kind of thing. Oh, do I have any lemon juice? Oh, that could be, I could go for another one. I could go for another whiskey and water. Try a whiskey and water and lemon juice. See how that is. Because maybe that would be like even more to my personal preference. But then it's not really a whiskey and water, is it? Like, if it's lemon-flavored water, then yes, it's still a whiskey and water. But if it's whiskey and water with lemon juice, then it's basically just a cold hot toddy with no honey. Do I want to try that? I could go for another drink. I could go for another drink. You know, I could go for another little bit of a beverage. What really made me want to try a whiskey and water, though, I'll acknowledge, is one, the fact that I've been drinking whiskey highballs for a little bit now. I've been drinking whiskey highballs for a minute now, I'll acknowledge. And I'm definitely getting buzzed, as I'm sure you guys can tell by the way I'm talking. I'm definitely getting a little bit buzzed. I have a nice buzz going, and I'm thoroughly enjoying it. But the main thing, besides the whole I've been drinking a lot of whiskey highballs, that's made me want to try a whiskey and water for the first time, has actually been, or was actually I think it was a historic video from BBC, if I remember correctly. And it was a video about a guy who drank whiskey while, like, walking across mountains in the UK, kind of thing. And so it was like, he wanted to go visit a friend. And so he just, like, grabbed his bottle of whiskey, grabbed, like, his bag, put his whiskey in his bag, grabbed a cup, and then just walked across the mountains and just, like, poured some whiskey in his cup, put some water in his cup from, like, streams and stuff like that. And he was just, like, drinking whiskey and waters, like, as he was going. And it was just, like, a video filming, like, him walking across the mountain to his friend's house and stuff like that kind of thing. And it was from, like, I think, like, the 1970s or 80s. I can't remember exactly when, but it was from quite a while back. And it was, like, an archived footage from the BBC. If I remember correctly, or if I remember too, I'll see if I can link the video in the comments or description. And I'll see if I can put a screenshot of the thumbnail on screen right now. But that was a really good video. I really enjoyed it. And that video really made me want to try a whiskey not a whiskey highball, a whiskey and water. Because I was like, man, this dude just drank a whiskey water. Why don't I try it kind of thing? Like, this looks baller as hell. Like, bros just drinking water from the stream, pouring whiskey. And I was like, bro, that's baller as hell. I was like, I got to try that. And, well, now here I am, trying a whiskey and water for the first time. Not from a stream. I'm not quite bold enough to do that. I'll acknowledge the streams in my area are certainly not clean enough to just drink straight out of. But Life Straw... Life Straw, stream water, and whiskey. Yo, that's kind of tempting, I'm not gonna lie. I'm still trying to think whether I want a whiskey and water with lemon juice. I think I'm probably going to just go for no. I don't think I'm going to do that today. Because that would kind of defeat the point of what I'm doing. Like, I'm drinking a whiskey and water for the first time today. I already have, but that's what this video is all about. If I mix lemon juice in, it's no longer a whiskey and water. It's a whiskey and water and lemon juice. But I really do think a whiskey and uncarbonated lemon water would be very solid kind of thing. Or just like a flavored water in general, I'll acknowledge. Do I want another water, though? Another whiskey and water, to be precise. Yes, I do. But high-key, I gotta take a piss. So I'm gonna go take a piss, and I'm gonna come back, and I'm gonna have another drink, because I want some more alcohol. I want to enjoy my experience today. To the fullest extent, I want another drink, so I'm gonna go take a piss. I'm gonna have another drink. I'll be back in a minute. And, yeah. So I'll be back, y'all. And we are back. No complaints on my behalf, I gotta acknowledge. The piss was a pretty solid one, and while I was inside, using the bathroom, I was just kind of thinking to myself, wow, yeah, that buzz, it's nice, but I want some more. And so as such, I'm glad I decided that I wanted another drink, because I do want another drink. But it's also getting a bit chilly out here, so I kind of want to put on my beanie and stuff. So I'm gonna do that real quick. I'm gonna put on my beanie and stuff that I have with me today. Yeah, I'm getting a bit chilly. It was like a high of like 49 today, so not like the warmest by any means, but certainly nicer temperature than it's been for a while in my local area. We had a pretty big cold spike about a week ago, so it's been a pretty nice temperature kind of thing, but I'm definitely wanting just a little bit of warmth on me, my beanie, my gator, etc., etc. And I'm definitely wanting another drink to kind of warm me up to the fullest degree. Honestly, I think just straight like whiskey and hot water would be really good. I think a straight like just whiskey and cold water would be super refreshing on like a warm day. Honestly, it's kind of a do-it-all drink. Whiskey and waters, they're kind of a do-it-all drink. Have it on a cold day with warm water, have it on a warm day with cold water. kind of a do-it-all drink. I have a decision in front of me, though. And that is, what water do I want to use for my next beverage? So I have a little bit more tap water left in my bottle. I didn't fill up my bottle when I went inside. And then I also have a little bit more of my Mountain Valley spring water. Which one do I want? Which water do I want to use for my next experience? And then really, I cannot state enough how much of an influence the type of water you use has on the flavor of a whiskey and water. It has so much influence. I see stuff and it's like, man, all water tastes the same. And I'm like, no. Not all water tastes the same. There is better water and there is worse water, but it all depends on kind of your personal preference kind of thing, I'll acknowledge. But there is water that you enjoy and there is water that you don't enjoy kind of thing. And I like both spring water and tap water, but tap water is more to my personal preference, at least in my local area. Just because it's just more what I'm used to, what I drink all the time. It's what I like kind of thing. I wouldn't drink tap water all the time if I thought it tasted gross, I'll acknowledge. I quite like the tap water in my local area. What can I say? I quite love my chlorine and other additives. I don't know what they put in tap water. Lead. I love my lead piping, you know what I'm saying? What can I say? I love my lead piping. People in Rome be like... That's actually the truth of the matter. The Romans were like, they did use lead pipes, didn't they? I don't know. I might be wrong about that. I can't remember. People in Rome be like, either way. I'm buzzed. I want another drink. Let's go and grab my bottle of whiskey again. My whiskey again. I had it backwards. And let's go and pour myself a little bit more. Just like that. And I think I'm gonna have one with my spring water. I think I'm gonna have a whiskey and water with my spring water. I think that's what I'm gonna do. Yeah. And I think I'm just gonna do that. I'm gonna do a little bit less water this time. And I can always add more water. If it's too much, I can add more water. But I kind of want to try it with less water this time around. Oh, I actually prefer that. I actually prefer it with less water. Believe it or not. That's actually... Wow! No, that's... Yeah, I'm really glad I tried that with less water. Okay. All right. Still very smooth. Wow. Wow. I got it. I was not expecting. I was not expecting to prefer a whiskey and water with a higher, like that was more of like a 2 to 5 maybe. I'm not sure. Probably more like still a 1 to 5. I think I was underestimating how much water I put in previously. I think the previous was more like probably 1 to 10. But with like a true 1 to 5 or like a 1 to 7. I actually prefer the lower amount of water to a higher amount of whiskey kind of thing. Like more whiskey, less water. That's kind of my personal preference, I'll acknowledge. That's kind of what I prefer. I think the puppy's about to come outside. Yo, what's up, Smokey? How's it going? How you doing? Hi. You want to come say hi to the camera? Hi, I'm just drinking a little bit. What are you doing? You need to go to the bathroom? No, come here. Come here. Hi. Hi. This is Smokey. I'm sure some of y'all have seen her before. She's a great dog. She's a great little puppy. Hi, Smokey. How you doing, huh? Say hi to the camera. Say hi to the camera, Moki. You go to the bathroom. I'll put you down. I'll put you down, all right? Whoop. Let me make sure I pick you up. Proper. There you go, Moki. All right, get off the porch now. Don't poop on the porch again. She's been pooping on the porch. It's been so cold she ain't wanting to get off the porch. But I can't be happy. Oh, sneeze. What, you snorting at me for dissing on you pooping on the porch, huh? I see what you're doing. I see what you're doing, Moki. Uh-huh. Yeah, I know. Mm-hmm. Yeah, she was snorting. Oh, another one. Wow. Get off the porch now. Thank you. I appreciate it. Yeah. During the massive cold spike in my local area like a week ago, Smokey that is, decided to poop on the porch. I need to get the poop. I need to find a shovel and get the poop off. It's like right over there. She pooped on the porch once or twice, which was not appreciated, but it was very cold. And so I totally get why she didn't want to get off the porch. Like, go outside, do your business, come right back inside. I get it. It's cold. But, yeah, I ain't trying to have puppy poop on the porch. You already done? You already did your business? You're already done? Really? She already came back up on the porch. Hi, Moki. How you doing, huh? You doing good? Did you get fed? You eat your food? You want to go back in? Let me let you back inside. Not yet, huh? Don't want to go back in yet? Chill out here for a little bit? All right. That's not usually how it goes. She's big on just going right back inside, but no, not today. Maybe she wants to hang out. There she is right there. Maybe she wants to hang out on video. I'm not sure. She does like, just kind of hanging out and smelling around every once in a while. So maybe that's what she wants to do. I gave her the option to go back in. I'll let her back in whenever she wants to go back in, whenever she knocks. But yeah, overall, I gotta admit, especially with the spring water, I do prefer a little bit less water and a little bit more whiskey. I do prefer that. No complaints. Overall, I'll acknowledge, I don't think whiskey and waters are something that everybody would like by any means. I don't think they are something that everybody will like by any means. But they are something that I certainly don't mind. The most similar alcoholic beverage I've ever had to a whiskey and water before, I totally thought at the beginning of this video was going to be a whiskey highball. I was so wrong about that. I was completely incorrect. The most similar beverage I've ever had to a whiskey and water before was Okinawan Awamori, which is a type of Okinawan liquor and alcohol in general that personally I found to be quite nice. It kind of took me a minute to kind of really fully appreciate it because it was so different than anything else I'd ever tried. But it's really, really, really nice. I really like it. And really the most similar experience you can get to that outside of Okinawa because they don't really export a lot of awamori outside of Japan. From what I know, at least. I could very well be wrong. I'm sure there's some place in California that carries it. But there's nowhere around me that carries it kind of thing. And I figure the same it can be said about a lot of the United States and a lot of the world. But the most similar experience I've ever had to awamori has been this. Whiskey and water. Specifically the whiskey with the spring water and stuff like that kind of thing. That's in specific the most similar experience. But yeah, very, very, very interesting. Oh, hi, Moki. I thought you walked over to the door, but no, she's right behind me, right down there. How you doing? What are you doing? I think there's a cat over there in the neighbor's yard. Not sure. And that was my third drink of the video. Overall, yeah, I gotta admit, I certainly don't mind. Whiskey and waters by any means. Do I prefer whiskey highballs or whiskey and waters? I do still prefer my whiskey highballs, I'll acknowledge. But I do also quite like my whiskey and waters. And I personally think that I can see myself drinking them a lot more in the future. especially when I just have a bottle of water and whiskey with me, which could be a good amount of the time depending on where I am in the world and depending on what I'm doing and depending on where I am in my local area kind of thing. If I just have a bottle of whiskey with me and I have some water, you know, I'm going to be drinking a whiskey and water. It's such a simple beverage. It's such a non-complex beverage. It's so easy to make, but there's a good amount of complexity to it. You can make it as complex or as simple as you want. And I really like that. I really appreciate that. I really like simple things that can be complex if you want them to be complex. And a whiskey and water is exactly that. I totally thought it was going to be a really simple experience coming into this because it's just whiskey and water. How wrong I was. Oh my God. Wow. I was so wrong. And this has, without a doubt, been an extremely large learning experience. This has been a very educational experience, no question in my mind. Yeah, overall, I gotta admit, I certainly don't mind. I certainly don't mind whiskey and waters. I certainly would drink another whiskey and water again in the future, and I'm looking forward to doing so. And while I might not prefer whiskey and water over whiskey highballs, I think I know which one's more convenient, and so I think I know which one I'm going to be drinking for convenience's sake, and it's not a whiskey highball, it's a whiskey and water. Yeah. Whiskey highballs, overall, final thoughts, do I like them? Yes. Are they, in my opinion, pretty unique in comparison to other whiskey-based mixed drinks? Actually, yes. You wouldn't think they would be, but they totally are. Are they oddly enough similar to Okinawan Awamori? Yes, absolutely. And do I enjoy whiskey and waters? Hell yeah, I do. They're pretty solid. Did I get a buzz as well? Yes, I did. I got a buzz. I am buzzing right now, and I am enjoying myself. And I gotta admit, I had a great time today drinking a whiskey and water for the very first time. Absolutely no complaints on my behalf. And I've thoroughly enjoyed this experience. And I hope you guys have thoroughly enjoyed watching this video. I finished off all 3 drinks I wanted to have during this video today. And I hope you guys have enjoyed watching. I know I've enjoyed making this video. Appreciate all y'all watching. I think that's all I wanted to say. So I think I'm going to go and end the video right here. Hope you guys have enjoyed watching this video. If you guys have, like, subscribe for more content. Of course, if you guys would like to like and subscribe, of course, I highly recommend you do exactly that. And of course, check out everything in the description down below. Thank you so much for watching, y'all. To the next one, stay safe in peace and have a great one.